And we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural dev chat with Algolia. Already a few people in chat asking some questions, which is absolutely amazing. Hi, everyone tuning in. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, my name is Brian Robinson. I am a senior developer relations specialist here at Algolia. And with me today, I have...
Hi, everyone. I'm Chuck Meyer. I am a senior developer relations engineer at Algolia.
Nice. So this is meant to be a super low-key stream. We're going to be doing some chatting, answering some questions. Sutha, we're going to talk a little bit about the product overview a little bit for you. But we're also going to walk through some demos we have coming up, some events we're going to be at, as well as in the future, any new product updates or any pull requests or anything happening in the entirety of kind of the Algolia ecosystem, whether that be inside the company with Instance.js or one of our SDKs, or within the community. So if a community member is writing blog posts, creating new content, we definitely want to highlight those as well. Looks like we also have quite a few other questions already piling up, which is excellent.
Awesome. I'm going to start making a list here.
Yeah, exactly. We got to keep track now. I wasn't expecting to keep track on this first episode, but that's
this is
excellent.
Fantastic.
It is absolutely what this is intended for.
Yeah.
So we're calling this Dev Chats with Algolia. That name is up for debate, but it is where we're at right now. If you have any suggestions around that, do tell us in chat. We're the current set of developer relations folk at Algolia. And if you don't know what that is your conduit into the company, as well as educators for whatever it is that you're looking to find out about. So we're going to be talking about all this stuff. But the first thing I kind of want to talk about is where we're going to be tomorrow, because that might be of interest to folks. So tomorrow is the Jamstack conference, Jamstack Conf for 2021. We're going to be doing a few things at Jamstack Conf. The first bit is we have a sponsor booth, and we're going to be running demos kind of all throughout the conference. So be sure to sign up and register for Jamstack Conf. It's tomorrow from, we lost Chuck. Tomorrow from, I believe, 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. Eastern time in the US through the evening. And then there's workshops on Thursday. We're not going to be taking part in the workshops. We will be throughout the first day in that booth. But we're also, I say we, I'm going to be doing a session tomorrow afternoon at 3:10 Eastern time. I believe that's 12:10 Pacific, and 9, I think, CEST, if we're trying to get all the time zones together. I'm going to be working with Jason Langsdorff to build something super secret with Algolia. I'm not at liberty to discuss the actual bits and pieces of that, but we're going to be doing some fun stuff. I'm going to be using some of the front-end libraries that we have available. And that's going to be at 3:10 in the what they're calling the Learn with Jason track. So that should be a lot of fun. What's that?
Now I want to know.
Now you want to know?
Now we're all dying to know.
Like I could take us off stream and I could tell you, but I feel like that would just be rude to everyone else.
I feel like then they would just want to know even more. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah. But Jamstack Conf is going to be awesome. If you're at all interested in the front end space, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. There's this theme this year of Jamstack now and then, or now and next. I like then because I like to talk about like 15 years ago doing Jamstack before it was Jamstack.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of great speakers coming around, a lot of great topics. Be sure to check it out. And like I said, come by and stop by the Algolia booth for demos and other stuff.
Awesome. Very cool. I'll definitely be hanging out at the booth as well. So I'm looking forward to chatting with folks. I guess just, for folks that don't know us too well yet, I should say that, like, obviously Brian has got the front end on lock. Brian's been working in the Jamstack for a while now, knows all of that stuff. My background is more on the back end. So I come from an AWS infrastructure background and sort of stitching together a bunch of back-end APIs. So I tend to talk a little bit more about data ingest and things of that nature, but we've got a lot of kind of interesting stuff that we can kind of go over today. I see a lot of questions around machine learning, recommendation, which I kind of implicitly suggest questions around event ingestion. So there's probably a lot of interesting stuff we can talk to you there. Definitely looking forward to that today.
Well, why don't we dive in a little bit, and let's talk a little bit to Sutha's question, just kind of looking for an overview of the tool in general, which I'm happy to do, but also there's definitely some stuff around what we call kind of the analytics suite behind stuff like the personalization, stuff like the AI recommendations, A/B testing, and stuff like that. So the question here specifically is, it seems that the AI is just the wording, the tech part is the pattern matching. It's not entirely that, but let's give a quick overview. So we'll just pull the screen here. So right now, what Algolia is two distinct kind of products within kind of this idea of search and discovery. There is Algolia Search, which is definitely what we've been known for the longest time. A great set of hosted APIs for doing search within any sort of platform you could think of, SDKs and everything from Python to Ruby to JavaScript with Node. But also, we had this new thing that came out in 2021, which is Algolia Recommend, which is based around AI and machine learning. And we can talk a little bit about that. But kind of the idea isn't just search, it's the idea of discovery and making sure that people are finding the content that you want them to find, or that they are looking for as well. So Chuck, I know that you recently did a little bit of work with the software engineers talking about Recommend a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit in general about it?
Yeah, that's right. So I think one thing that trips folks up that have been hanging out in the Algolia space for a while is Recommend is a bit of an overloaded term in the Algolia space. So when we talk about recommendations, we might be talking about one of two things. We might be talking about essentially product recommendations or recommendations that are based 100% on the data that sits within your index, right? So whatever your records are, there is sort of a flavor of recommendation that can sort of build out relevance based on those records themselves. More recently, as Bryan said, we've delved into the AI space. So we actually have the recommendation product, which is essentially a managed machine learning application where we can train models on the data associated around sort of the metadata around your index and make recommendations that way. And both of those are viable approaches. The first one is sort of based on the data itself. The second one is based on event ingestion, right, using our Insights API. And a lot of the things that Sutha, you were asking about, right, around A/B testing, around, I think you were asking about increased relevance. I know you were asking about recommendations. All of that is sort of based on collecting that additional event information. So, sort of in this Algolia ecosphere, you have the search itself, right? So a user comes in, looks in your search box or what have you, pulls up a set of results. Then that user clicks on one of the things within that result set. What you would want to do is capture that event, right? That click event. We capture not just what they clicked on, but where it showed up in the search order. Was it the first result? Was it the third result? Right? And then kind of going from there, we keep all of that information, track it back to individual users, and then you could use those recommendations within search itself to increase relevance, or you can feed all of that into one of our machine learning models once you have enough of it, and then we can actually use those models to increase relevance as well. So as Bryan said, we did a live coding session, Clement and myself, just recently, and it was kind of a tag team. So what I did was I walked through a lot of the mechanisms for collecting those events, right? Collecting click data, and most important for some of the recommendations, collecting conversion data, right? So deciding that a user has come far enough that actually that was a successful search result that led to an intended result, whether that be adding something to their shopping cart, or adding something to their playlist, or adding something to their, or actually purchasing, right? And so taking all of that data and collecting it and getting a significant amount of that, because anyone who's done machine learning knows that you need a lot of data to train a model. In our case, like for our, recommend similar items style, you need about 10,000 events, right, where folks have clicked on various things, so that we can kind of start understanding the patterns within your record set. And so that is kind of the core of our recommend product. Now for some of the other stuff, again, it just kind of all plays off the events data as well. But what we need to kind of think about here is essentially a multi-tier approach where you've got just generic search, right? You've ingested a bunch of records, we've indexed them, we're providing search results back based on the configuration associated with that index, stepping up the game to those mid-tier services that Sitho was talking about, where essentially you can start tweaking those results, right? You can get into your configuration, start tweaking results, start saying, hey, I really want to make sure that we throw one of these in there, right? Because we're doing, it's a special thing we're doing this week. Hey, based on user behavior in the past, because I've collected all this valuable insight data, I want to massage the relevance in these particular ways. And then you can start running experiments. And that's where the A/B starts coming in, where you can start saying, okay, let's see how this is doing compared to where I was a week ago or a month ago, right? So you can really start playing with the results. And the interesting thing there too is you can be doing this all very dynamically, because you can do it either through the APIs or you can be doing it there in the dashboard, which allows you to sort of offload some of that work to the business resources, right? So it's not always a code change. You can kind of be working hand in hand with the business folks to kind of tweak those results. So I don't know if that's kind of getting to the meat of what you're looking for. I know we're kind of doing the 500-foot overview right now. But as we kind of drill in, I think, one that answers the question, do you need to have machine learning models to do recommend? Well, to use the recommend product, yes. But to do recommendations, kind of via the records and via that insight data, no, actually you don't. You can actually do it kind of based on that data in real time without having to train a model. And the cool thing that Clement does in his piece of that live coding session is he talks about using those strategies together. So he talks about, obviously, like the kind of most interesting thing you could do is use a machine learning model. Well, our machine learning models right now are very geared towards e-commerce, so you have to be living in that space. But if you're living within that space, the models are pretty awesome and worth looking into. But
I'll say, like, to jump in real fast, the two big things in that e-commerce space are going to be the frequently bought together model and the related products model that actually kind of can figure out what, in terms of the related products, what goes with what without you having to go in and associate that data on your own.
Yeah, the frequently bought together is super cool, right? So basically what that's doing is, I was talking about this conversion events. If you give us conversion events where you say, hey, by the way, it was these two objects, right? These two records within the index were in the shopping cart when the purchase button was clicked, then we can use that information. And I think we only need like 1,000 of those, honestly. Like if we get 1,000 of those records where we have like the ability to kind of see, okay, some of these items are often bought together, we can build those edges for you, right? And we can start inferring that, which means that like you get these really interesting search results. Without stealing too much thunder from the live coding session, there's like a really cool thing where Clement chose a jacket and the model was also wearing, obviously the rest of her outfit, and all of those items showed up in the frequently bought together, which makes sense, right? So people are going and kind of buying the look. So there's sort of interesting use cases there. If you fall into that e-commerce space, if you don't fall in that e-commerce space, then there's opportunities to fall back or to use some other mechanisms around personalization, right? And personalization is really about like, what has this user done? What is this user's history with your search? What have they searched for in the past? Like, what have they clicked on? What's been successful? So you're taking the product out of that equation, right? Like the recommend, the machine learning model is users and products. Personalization is just what's the user's behavior, and can I make recommendations to this user based on past behavior? And then the final fallback is recommendations based on just the items. I keep saying products because we are using e-commerce in this case, but in a media case, it would be like your movies or your podcasts or what have you, right? Knowing, because you have faceted that data, there's opportunities there to do recommendations just around that, which is kind of the simplest way to do recommendations.
So Chuck, I'm gonna pause you real fast because I think there are two questions that are related to what we're talking about that Taylor has asked. So first, we've kind of covered this. So does your AI work out of the box, or does it take time to identify the habits or the data? And the answer is it does take some time. You need the data, as Chuck was talking about before. And what were you saying, the amount of data that we need for reliable recommendations?
Right. So it's 10,000 events for the similar items, and that's click or conversion events. And then for the feature frequently bought together, it's 1,000 conversion events that have 2 or more objects in it. And I think, just to kind of double down on that, Taylor, these are not pre-trained models. So these are models, we've built the model, but you have to train it against your data. We don't know what it is exactly that you're selling, right? So that's why there has to be this training element. We absolutely need your particular event data in order to make a model that's going to work well with your catalog. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and then the other question, also from Taylor, that I thought was a good thing to cover was: can frequently bought together take in legacy data, like order data from before Algolia was installed? Which is I would say a frequently asked question.
Yes, it is definitely a frequently asked question, and it is definitely something that the Recommend team is hearing. So what is going on right now is Insights, our ability to collect event data, predates any type of machine learning, right? We've been collecting insight data for a while now. And there were decisions made when that API was built to put a hard limit on how far back in history you could go, essentially to kind of ensure the integrity of that data, that that's a real-time stream of data. So for now, the API is locked so that you can't go backward in time more than 4 days. So it has to be more or less real-time data coming in. Fresh data, fresh-ish data. So yeah, for now, you're not able to backport in a bunch of historical data, which, trust me, as someone who builds a bunch of demos, is maybe not as frustrating as you all trying to build stuff in production, but I feel your pain of trying to get a bunch of data in there, a bunch of good quality data, right? That's going to actually train a model. That said, this is a top of mind complaint or request, we'll say.
Feature request.
Yes, and our Recommend team and our Insights team are working together to figure out ways to improve that situation for folks going forward.
Now, the other side of that is, while you can't import legacy data, you can use third parties that are doing data collection for you anyway. So if you're using segment.io or if you're using Google Tag Manager, you can actually use the integrations that we've got with those platforms to start recording this data. So it doesn't have to be custom, if nothing else, to get those events going in to be trained.
I think the one I saw the other day was it Rudyard? Someone just announced that they just did an integration with our analytics too.
Nice.
I think Rudder. What is it? Rudder
Stack.
Rudder Stack. That's it. Thank you.
Let me see if I can pull that up real fast. Yep, they have a docs page dedicated to it. So let's take a look at that real fast. So RudderStack, another kind of insights platform, has some docs around integrating with Algolia Insights to make sure everything is kind of put together, which is super helpful in a lot of ways. And yeah, Taylor's also saying, glad it's not pre-trained. Each e-commerce site is unique in their own way, because if nothing else, the products all have their own data, and the users are different, especially when it comes to like tracking this insight data. Your users for one site, even if it's all like maybe clothing specific, right? But your users are technically different from another site's users. So tracking them independently is the way to go, definitely. Nice. Let me give a quick scroll through the other things that we have in here.
I think Taylor, so I saw there was another question you had about Shopify, if I can find it again. And
I got it up on screen now.
Yeah, and I think Shopify, there is an integration to collect event data there as well. So, yeah. Unfortunately, again, not retroactively, but once you get that turned on, you should be able to start collecting data right away. That'll allow for personalization very quickly, and then moving into the machine learning models as you kind of move forward from there.
So and the question is also, can I filter out a set of procs from my indices? And the answer I have off the top of my head is I don't know. So let's find out. Let me take a look at the integration real fast.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a capability of the API. The question is, how is it surfaced within Shopify?
unfortunately, the answer to that may still end up being I don't know by the end of it. But I would say that if nothing else, there are going to be ways around it, and there are going to be ways of making sure that the data that comes through to the front end is only the data you want, whether that's via a tagging mechanism in the data or something different. But let me see, where is our ingestion on this? Let's see, or any data that matters. Okay, it looks like there's definitely some ability to do active versus inactive around the facets and the sort ordering. All this is mostly going to be from within the Shopify GUI, the graphical user interface. But anything, once you get the data in terms of keeping that up to date or doing other mutations around that, you're able to kind of handle the data yourself as well. So you can do a little bit of both to make sure that what you want is always what you get in there, or what you want on the front end is always what you get as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some digging on this, the Shopify specific answer to this question, but like the kind of the general answer is if you've got tags on your records, especially if you have those faceted, right? Facets are definitely going to be clutch for that, right? Being able to sort of filter out individual facets. I just don't know how that's exposed on the Shopify side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, the other side would be, you've got your index, and as you said, like you've got the idea of faceting. So that definitely when you're making requests and queries against it, you can definitely segment those queries to those filters.
Oh, and reading, so Taylor's continuing to comment. I have a large set of products, about 18K products, that I don't want counted towards records. So is this, Taylor, are you saying that what you're hoping is not to have them ingested into your indices, that you want them to just live on the Shopify side?
Yeah.
Okay, got you. So this isn't like, it's not that you don't want them to show up in the results, it's that you don't want them to be indexed in the first place?
That's what it sounds like. So the other side of that, and Taylor, I don't know your background. The integrations make a lot of the initial work with Algolia super easy. Like you just click a few buttons and you get an index, which is awesome. But when you start getting into kind of granular things like that, it oftentimes is going to be potentially better to kind of to kind of do some of that ingestion maybe on your own with like a build script or something like that. You can use rules. Rules would work for display. So I don't know exactly if that wouldn't keep them from being counted against the number of records. Taylor, this would actually be a great question and a great segue to talk about. We do have our discourse forum, discourse.algolia.com. And there is some questions around Shopify in there, but you can definitely post them. And I'll tell you what, if you post them, I'll make sure that Chuck or I take a look at it, and we'll talk to the team that handles the integrations and find out a little bit more about how that works. Next button without the ability to add rules for indexing. Yeah. I think that's a fair question, and it's a question, unfortunately, that I don't have an answer to right now. I'll say this, I would hope that there's a way, because you have the idea of collections, but again, you're gonna have to figure out what the rule is going to be, whatever it is, whether you do this as part of the integration or part of some other kind of script on the outside. Is it going to be based off of if you only want one collection in Shopify indexed, you only want one set of tags, you only want X from every collection indexed? It's going to kind of be an implementation concern for kind of where you go from there. It's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you on that. Let's see. Scrolling back through chat again. Again, I really didn't think we would have questions our first time out with this, but it's been great conversations, I think. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it for the current slate of questions. And again, apologies on that Shopify question. I haven't actually had a chance to use our Shopify integration yet.
Yeah, there's one other piece to this, Brian. If let me see, I'm going to drop this in the chat, and Taylor, you might have already been through this. If you already have, just say dead end. Let me know. How do I put this into comments? I have a chat box on private chat.
There should also be another one in there. You can also just send it to me behind the scenes and I'll get it in there.
Okay.
No big deal.
Do that real quick. I think it might be because I'm not logged in, Brian. Next time I should probably log in.
Yeah, we can definitely make that happen.
Okay. Yeah. You know, we're kind of still kicking the tires on this and getting all of the lug nuts tightened. So
I didn't know the internet had lug nuts.
Oh yeah. So many lug nuts. So
I'll
basically,
say, Sutha, real fast, just to kind of answer your question. But if you want to set up a demo, I can definitely have someone reach out to you. Send me a DM or send the Algolia account on Twitter a DM or send us an email. Let me find a good email address for you on that. You can also reach out to me as well, and I'll make sure that you get handled. So.
Yeah.
Let me just share that and see how much spam I get from the internet. But brian.robinson@algolia.com. Send me an email and I'll find the right person to put you in touch with to get a personalization and A/B testing demo set up.
Oh, heck
yeah. So did you have that link for me, Chuck?
Yes, I sent you a link over the private chat, but it basically it was talking about there's a special tag you can put on records. Called Algolia ignore, but it looks like it's kind of a per record. Is that something you've already tried, Taylor? So if you scroll down the link I gave you, Brian, there should be a section called skipping a product, but it's for individual products. And I'm wondering if maybe that's where things kind of.
So your products are indexed if they're published, sure. Aren't set to active or published. Don't. Okay. No, this is great. So you might have to I'm not sure about the best way to clear out your index.
Yeah.
But you could, this Algolia ignore tag in Shopify. Add this to products.
Yeah. So I know you were saying it was about 18,000 products. I'm not sure if that's tenable or not, but it looks like, you know, it seems like our approach is a per record approach rather than sort of having like I'm guessing you probably would rather have like if this tag then, right, or something else that was already sort of in the data. Oh, okay. This is something you can work with.
Let's see. I like the all caps there. I'm
yeah.
clicking on this positive one. The devs thought of you specifically. I just talked to them. It's definitely there. But yeah, perfect.
Great.
Chuck, let's round of applause for Chuck on that. That was awesome. I'm really bad at scanning things live. Like I just want to read. And so, yeah, you found that super quick.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And now I'm excited to see so this is a space, to be perfectly honest, you know, I am I still have that new DevRels smell for Algolia. So I haven't delved into the Shopify integration too deeply. So if this is something could be a cool thing to kind of build a use case around. So if you could follow up, you know, Taylor, with Brian or myself and let us know if this solves your problem, maybe we can build sort of a demo or a blog around it so we can help the next person too.
Yeah, because I mean, this is it's its own little heading in this integrations, but it is kind of deep down. It is semi-buried in this way. So yeah, I think surfacing this. Out of curiosity, Taylor, what is going to be your mechanism? How are you going to decide what gets indexed and what doesn't? What's kind of the business behind that? Obviously, keeping records to a minimum is what you're going for, but I'd be curious to know what other criteria you'll use in that. But yeah, so let's see. I think I saw another question come through as well. Okay, so Sutha was actually asking for some us versus them kind of content, which is always exciting. Different between FactFinder and Elastic. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about FactFinder, but we could probably talk about Elastic a little bit. But there's a few different things going on in there. The main thing for me when it comes to Elastic is that with Algolia, you don't have to set anything up. A lot of the stuff kind of happens and you don't have to figure out your own ranking or anything like that. You don't have to worry too much about all these SDKs are kind of ready to go specifically for this use case.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that if I had to sum it up in one sentence, we are out of the box opinionated.
Out of the box opinionated. Dig it.
So we've got as an Algolia user, you know that when you go into a new index, we've already sort of established these are the fundamental rules that we think are a good middle ground for search, right? Around fuzzing, right? Around typos, fuzzing, around geo, what order those should be in, optimized for, the specific use case of a user going to interact with this as a search box. And then the cool thing is, despite the fact that we're incredibly opinionated, all of that is configurable. So you have the ability to kind of go back and tweak all of that stuff. And most critically, tweak that stuff in a way that your business users can participate in the conversation easily, right? Which is something that historically, having worked with Elasticsearch in the past, the challenge is that you build a configuration, you check that, at least what we would do is we would check that into source control, that would get deployed, then you would go see how it worked, and then there would have to be another conversation. The business folks would tell you whether or not that was right or not, right? And then you go back and you iterate again, which is not bad, right? That's agile. But how much cooler if your business folks can be right there engaged in the conversation, have a dashboard that they can go into, and then let the devs continue to develop as opposed to sort of just try and codify business logic. So, I mean, that's just at a 500-foot view without getting into like a feature by feature comparison.
Sure. And I'll also say one other thing, and I think this is what I was hoping to find. But there is this kind of idea of scoring versus kind of the text-based hierarchical search querying that we do. So in Elastic World, you get an underscore score for each piece of content in various ways, and I think based on queries as well. But Algolia functions much differently with a set of rules that kind of get created by default. I think there's 7 text-based rules that come out of the box with Algolia, like you said, for fuzzing, for typo matching, and other stuff. But Elastic's going with this kind of scoring mechanism that I think kind of hides some things under the hood a little bit. But this is a blog post talking about how Algolia search works, why it's a little bit different, and kind of why they went down that path in the past as well. But that's kind of the other big thing, right? Like Elastic is not keys included, like Chuck was talking about, and kind of the underlying search mechanism is a little bit different as well. Less based on scoring, more based on text and kind of the underlying pieces there.
Yeah, Algolia is not Lucene, it's not Solar. It is its own engine, built from scratch essentially. So it is a different beast for certain. But man, I really want to kind of get into some of the content stuff too. And Taylor, I see, yeah definitely follow up with us. I really want to hear more about the use case. I get what you're getting at there, and I think that's an interesting thing that I would love to delve into. I love seeing these more complex sort of like multi, kind of like we've got different views for different folks kind of situations. I'm curious to see because it feels like a fascinating thing to me, but maybe I'm just not getting the whole picture here.
Fascinating. It might also be some sort of federation depending on what the collections are. But yeah, I think having, it sounds like you're trying to go for like a super guided search, which could be very interesting and might be best served with a smaller index. But yeah.
Cool. So if it's all right with all you, we're gonna maybe jump into some content.
Yeah.
What you got, Brian?
I'm trying to find our notes. I've pulled up so many different things with so many great conversations we're having.
Yeah, I'm looking.
My notes are gone.
We talked about Jamstack. We were going to talk about autocomplete next. If you want to jump into that.
Sure. Yeah. Let me grab that real fast. Let's see. So I happened to write a blog post a few weeks back. And actually, I didn't even pull this up off to the side. Shame on me. We have, like I mentioned before, a lot of great front-end libraries. One of which probably most people are familiar with is instant search. It's the way of implementing search on your front end, which is kind of what most people come to Algolia for at this point. However, we have an awesome library called Autocomplete.js, and it works great with Algolia, but it also works with any number of data sources. So a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, Sarah Dayon, one of our staff engineers, went on the Learn with Jason stream and showed him the ropes around how to use autocomplete in a fairly basic search experiment. They built a search together and kind of moved on. But at the end of it, she posited this idea of an omnibar, a bar that has more than just search or more types of search all kind of combined. And so that was fairly recent into my time with Algolia. And so I saw it and I said, I have to do this. So what we have, let me actually go to the demo, is a code sandbox. And this link that I posted in chat will definitely get you what you need in terms of getting up and running. But here's kind of the finished product, where on the right-hand side here, we have a front end, and it has a search bar. And you'd expect a search bar to be able to like autocomplete for you and like kind of bring in the search results. But what this actually does, and it can work alongside all your search results, is it allows you to have your users trigger actions on your site via JavaScript. And so I could type /dark and change this over to dark mode, and I can toggle it back to light with /light. So it's a power user feature to allow people to do more things from within the site search. So this is no longer just a search bar anymore. It's an omni search. Since I've been talking about it, people have talked about like Alfred on Mac OS.
Love Alfred.
They've talked about like the Firefox search bar. Like all these things are very similar in what they do. I even have like a default here that just fires just a toast notification at the bottom. But I think that's been a running interesting bit for us at Algolia. And in fact, we just, and this isn't in our notes, so let me grab the link. Sarah actually just updated an old guide that we had. Let me find it. Yeah, guide.
So just out of curiosity, I know we've got a few active while you're looking, we've got a few active folks in the chat. I'm curious if folks have played with autocomplete, or if you were aware of it. You know, anything from like used it to had no clue it existed, just out of curiosity.
So another pattern that we're exploring while we get some answers to that, right, is this idea of mentions, the mentions pattern. So you're on Twitter, you do @ and start typing, and it pulls up a list of anyone you might want to tag. Same with hashtags, right? So that is still search. It's just not search inside of a search box. And so we had this old demo. It was actually written in jQuery. It was super old. No one was all that interested in using it anymore. But the pattern itself is super solid. And so Sarah rewrote this this guide, and I'll post this in chat as well, on how to recreate the Twitter mention functionality with autocomplete. And I'll pull up a live demo again of this. Again, in a code sandbox. So if you just want the code, you can grab that as well. But here's kind of a Twitter text box, and I can just type random messages, right? And no one really cares. But as soon as I enter an @ and start typing, it finds and starts doing matching from Algolia, from an index in Algolia around the people, right? I don't think that this is implemented hashtags, no. But you could very easily then identify when the hash symbol is used and start searching based on that as well. So we're actually going to be doing a little bit more around this pattern in the near future. But that guide is a very interesting guide, and we really want to start exploring it outside of Twitter. The mentions pattern is something that Twitter did really well and probably even started the use case. But you go into like Google Docs and you're just typing a document, you hit a certain shortcut and you get this kind of search experience. You go into Notion, you start doing it, you get it in there. Slack has it. Like all these different platforms have it, and it's kind of this rich text area that you wouldn't expect to be able to search inside of. So it's a pattern we're going to be exploring in the next few months and growing out. But definitely start here and with the Omnibar example, because autocomplete allows for some really interesting new patterns that are more discovery than search, or search outside of a search box, which can also be super interesting.
Yeah, and this kind of ties into what you were, your comment earlier about federation, right? Like autocomplete is a really interesting way to federate across Algolia, but also across non-Algolia, right? And get like a really unified, super powerful text interface, essentially, for interaction with your site. So, I mean, how cool would it be if you've got your search box and you can be searching for things and adding them to your cart, but then you type shopping cart and you get the contents of your shopping cart? That would be kind of an interesting use case. And
kind of the other side, yeah.
I always hate looking for that shopping cart button.
Exactly, right? Or like maybe you've got a shipping address, right? And you want to change your shipping address, and you have like a side-by-side panel that shows you all the actions you can do from within the bar, and you type, shipping address, and then you do like your address, and it changes your shipping address or something along those lines. It just opens up all these kind of power user ideas that can go a super long way to doing interesting things, or sign up for a marketing email, or sign up for, or follow on Twitter, or all these different things you can kind of plug into the autocomplete ecosystem and start doing.
And you're going to be demoing that tomorrow too, right? Is that one of the ones? Oh, okay.
So I'll say this. Tomorrow in Learn with Jason, we're going to be doing some work around an Omnibar. We're going to be having some fun with an Omnibar. And if you know anything about the Learn with Jason show, it's all about interesting and fun use cases and giving power to developers to do weird and awesome stuff. So we're going to be doing a little bit of that tomorrow, about 3 o'clock, I think, Eastern time. Again, check out jamstackconf.com for that. And it's going to be in the afternoon there.
Cool. Awesome.
So yeah, I think next on the list was talk about your ingestion piece, right?
Yeah, we can dig into that some. Obviously, if there's any more questions along the way, we'd love to see that. But yeah, let me see here. I think I have to reshare my screen. I went and clicked on the login.
When you got booted earlier.
Yeah, I tried to click on the login button. I realized that I wasn't logged in, so that's okay. We'll keep this moving.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is I should actually bring this blog post up too. Here's me digging in on faceting. So yeah, if you look over on the blog as well. So this was essentially me, not big things bookmarked well, but also me playing with sort of backend data ingest. So as Brian said, like we're both kind of trying to get up to speed quickly on all the different areas of Algolia. And being a data ingest person, I kind of wanted to find an easy way to kind of get up to speed on a bunch of different patterns. And COVID data was kind of the first thing that came to mind. It was the beginning of the school year and my kids were going back to school. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of start playing with some of the geosearch capabilities that Algolia has. So like essentially dropping location data into my index and then quickly picking that up, doing searches against that data, and then expressing it through like Google Maps or something like that. COVID data was a low-hanging fruit. Johns Hopkins University has like a really robust sort of pre-normalized set of COVID data around confirmed case counts and deaths, sadly, and folks that got better, all of that good stuff. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to kind of see what I could do with that. And the way they express that data, I think I can get to it fairly quickly here, is as a GitHub repo. So essentially, no, that's actually just the university. Let's see, we'll go here. Yep. So essentially, it's just a pile of comma separated value files. And so like if I go in here, we can say daily reports. And so you can see each of these is essentially like the case counts from that particular day across the world. And they just drop a new file in here every time they've got new data, which isn't necessarily real time, right? They tend to lag a couple days. It's a little challenging to deal with though, because one, you're not sure what the latest date is, and two, this is scientific data, so it's constantly getting updated, which means that like it's not even the latest file in the list, right? They might get new data for August and then refresh all of those days, and those might be more recent. So the data itself is fairly easy to ingest, but I had a lot of challenges around kind of getting to what is the most recent data. And that's when I discovered that the folks over at MongoDB had actually taken the same data and expressed it as a document store. So you can actually go in and get the same data as a document store from Mongo. And because they're using their managed service version of MongoDB, out of the box, you get a REST API along with that, and you also get a GraphQL interface to it. And so this was great because it gave me an opportunity to kind of play with a lot of different patterns. And so I was kind of saying, okay, let's see what happens if I pull it from the flat files. What happens if I pull it from, use the GraphQL interface, make a GraphQL query against it, and then obviously straight up REST API, and then used a Mongo client. And I found pros and cons of each of them. Without getting like too much into the details, I guess I can give you the spoiler alert. I could make you read the whole blog post. But
spoilers, don't tell me. Okay.
Yeah. Anyone want to guess what I thought was the best way to do it? And if you guess going straight to the MongoDB, you'd actually be right. Because that was kind of like the sweet middle ground. I really like the flat files. They have a lot more data in them. There's some stuff that gets lost when Mongo brings them over into the document store. But what the advantage was that they provide you with a lot of metadata. So it's very easy to go in. I'm going to even show the code.
Yeah.
So it's easy to go in. You can see here are each of the different files. Do I have this too big?
No, I think it's perfect.
Reasonable. Okay. So like basically here let's get rid of this terminal for a minute so they can see. Here we go. So let's see, this is the CSV. Oh wait, now we want the Mongo one. Well, here, I'll show them both. So, oh yeah, let me show you. That's what one of the CSV files looks like. So if you go from the CSV file, you can see like they've got locality information. You've got your geo information here. And then like you get like the case counts essentially for each area. Yeah, I'm not going to do any of these updates. Sorry. But like there's actually like a lot of really interesting sort of like granular data around like countries outside the US. But the MongoDB is just so much easier to deal with. I like the fact that like essentially I can go in here and they've got this metadata attribute called last date that tells you like this is the last date we have data for. So super easy to just go in and just grab the stuff you want. It allowed me to do some basic filtering, right? Just get sort of the fields that I'm looking for here. I'm just mapping the confirmed cases. I'm not mapping death counts because I'm not that morbid or goth.
Yeah.
So I didn't need the death rates. So I just didn't ask for them here. Playing with GraphQL, kind of very similar here. I can go in and I can build out a GraphQL query. I can just give it the list of attributes that I need out of it. The main reason that I wasn't super into the GraphQL here was MongoDB exposes their GraphQL endpoints as authenticated endpoints. It was just kind of a pain having to authenticate into it. And, honestly, it didn't really buy me that much more because it's a single data source. So we're not doing like, any sort of interesting sort of abstraction across multiple data sources. I'm doing an ingest, right? So we're doing like a batch upload. So it's not like we're limited by the amount of bandwidth we have or anything like that. So it just didn't buy me too much more. That said, it was interesting. It was kind of fun to kind of go in and try and play with a backend use case. I'm still looking for a really strong backend use case for GraphQL. I saw a couple at the GraphQL conference last week, which were kind of interesting, but haven't had a chance to pursue them.
But anyway, I posted in chat real fast. If you want to argue with Chuck on the internet about GraphQL, he did post during GraphQL Conf that he was unconvinced that GraphQL is a great use case for this. So if you believe it's a great use case, go argue with Chuck on the internet. Twitter post in chat right now.
I do an npm start. There it is. I'm not a front end guy again. Anyway, so this is, I think this is running off the Mongo data right now, but you can see. So essentially, we're using GeoSearch within Algolia. What I've done is I've actually, I've sorted the records by confirmed case counts. The thought there is that like when you're really zoomed out like this, you'll get like kind of the hotspots. So the most interesting areas here, and then kind of as you command zoom in, you should start getting like sort of interesting sort of population centers here. So you can see like there's Chicago, and then you move in. Oh, there's Columbus popping up. So this is by county in the US, but you can scroll over and kind of get into similar data in the EU here. You can kind of get into Spain and all the different areas here. So it was just kind of an interesting, I hadn't really seen like a geographic representation of this data before. So I thought it was kind of a fun use case. It really gave me some, now I have opinions, which is what I was really trying to get out of it. So now I have a geo search for COVID data and opinions, which I think is good.
Opinions are great. And hopefully people will share their opinion about GraphQL on Twitter with you.
Yeah. Now the next piece of this obviously is like, okay, primary ingest is one thing, but keeping it evergreen is the challenge. And so that's kind of what I want to get into next, is starting to think about like, okay, if we did go off that GitHub repo, like, would we use like a GitHub action, and then how would we find the latest file, versus like MongoDB, you might just have like a cron job that runs a couple times a day. And then thinking about like, is this data that warrants a full, there's not really that much data. Can I just do a full index refresh each time? Or am I in a situation like Taylor's where I have a significant number of records and I need to be really thoughtful about which ones I inject into the indices each time? And I'd love to get into more conversations around that, because that's really the next piece of this that I want to write is, we've got the begetting or the genesis of an index, but what's the care and feeding for an index over time?
That I need that to be the series name, care and feeding for your index, like or something like make. So I'm a baker. I do sourdough, and I have 2 cats and a child, but I also have this other thing that I have to feed daily too. And so
what's its name?
I try not to feed, not to name it. It's very important to me because I'm going to eat it, and you don't name things that you're going to eat.
See, my wife's starter is named Seymour, and her argument is that we never eat Seymour, but we do eat Seymour's children.
That's worse. That's worse. So yeah. I suppose we have a few minutes left, so definitely post any questions that you've got over in chat. But I want to give everyone a sneak peek. Can I give everyone a sneak peek, Chuck?
Yes.
So tomorrow, there is a new blog post going live. I don't have a sneak peek for the blog post, but it is based on the Jamstack. And for those of you in chat, if you are familiar with the Jamstack, I don't know, I'm not going to assume things. The Jamstack is it's headless, it's serverless, it's all these things. It cares about HTML, and it serves HTML over CDNs. That's kind of what it boils down to. The Jamstack serves HTML via CDNs, and then everything else is updated in other ways. So that works great with Algolia. Algolia pairs super well with the Jamstack because most of our functionality can be handled with dynamic browser, client-side JavaScript. It works great. Instant search is awesome. Autocomplete, as we just kind of talked about before, that's awesome. But I kind of wonder what happens when JavaScript fails, right? You're on one of these amazing experiences. You go to do instant search, and whether you're a user that's disabled JavaScript by default, which is, I think, actually a perfectly reasonable thing for some people to do who have concerns about all sorts of stuff on the web, or something in the developer's code base has tweaked and not been noticed. What happens when JavaScript breaks? If you don't have a server, what do? Right? So if we're back in my day, we had a PHP server, right? And we would have this cool front end JavaScript happening. And when it failed, you would hit enter and the search would still work. It would send the query off to a server and it would render a search page. No big deal. But in the Jamstack, I don't have a server. No servers for me. The servers belong to someone else. The Netlifys, the Vercels of the world. And so what you'd have to do is create a serverless function to handle it. And that serverless function would have to render out your HTML, right? The HTML you need for the page. So if you were to do that, you would be writing probably 2 sets of HTML. Your client side, the HTML that you ship to the browser to begin with from whatever you're using. I'm a static site generator fan. I use a static site generator called Eleventy more often than not. And it ships in the build. There's no dynamic functionality. If I want to write that, I write maybe some handlebars in my serverless function, or maybe I write a JS template string literal and like have to recreate my header, my footer, or just do this like really pared down like UI. And that's not really great, right? You have 2 code bases then you have to maintain. And when I was sharing this with Chuck a couple of weeks ago, his comment was, it works great until somebody does a search and sees the time machine design that you had 2 years ago when you first wrote that serverless function. So what I have written about and what goes live on the Algolia blog tomorrow, algolia.com/blog, is, oh, thank you, Chrome, for not opening over here, is a serverless search using E11D. So this is a whole bunch of blog posts from my blog using like real world data. And here's a search bar. So typically you'd have instant search, you'd have autocomplete. Neither of those is implemented here. No front-end JavaScript is in use here. But I can type E11D in here, hit enter. You can see that I'm querying in search. The query is E11D, and here are all of the E11D posts. This is dynamic content being generated by my serverless function, but it's being generated by the exact same static site generator code that my generated files are. And it's being generated based on this query being passed to it. So it's actually happening at request time, which is very different from what typically happens with the Jamstack. And it's using a new piece of functionality inside of E11D called E11D Serverless. It's not in the official production build of E11D yet. It's in the upcoming 1.0 release of E11D. Not out of beta yet, but still coming along. And I've used it numerous times and it still works great. So what ends up happening, and some spoiler alerts for the blog post tomorrow for like the full code, you can go check that out, is I have this index.html and I tell it what URL to live at on build. And it's going to loop through all of the pieces of data that I'm getting from Algolia. And it's going to just display everything using an include called article.html. That article looks like this. It's just going to have an H2, the description, and it has a link to the content, right, and an anchor. And then I use that exact same template. Again, this is all to keep things in one code base, right? I don't want multiple code bases drifting around. Inside of my search route, search.html, I tell it to have a search URL, and this is actually going to look into my serverless functions, find the search E11D function, and then take the query and run that query through this assign tag right here. So let me isolate to make it a little easier to read. I broke it. So it's actually going to look at the E11D object on the serverless function, find in the query strings the query. Naming is super hard. I named it query and it's in the query strings. So that's awesome. And then it's going to run through a filter, an E11D filter, which is actually just a nunjux or a liquid filter. I know we had somebody earlier, Taylor, who likes Shopify. Liquid is in E11D as well. It runs it through a custom filter that I've created that is in my config. Where'd that go? There it is. That all this is doing is it's going to take that query and it's going to pass it into an Algolia search method, and it's going to only get back the very specific items that I need to populate. So I'm keeping my JSON as small as possible, and then it just returns those hits. And so every time I do a search and hit that endpoint, it's going to build the HTML based on not the serverless function, based on not some third-party little thing that I've had to write in my serverless function, but on my actual E11D code base in this exact same loop and this exact same include that my article display already was. So I don't have to write any additional code. There's no new design to upkeep. In fact, my base template includes a header and a footer, and so that's automatically being applied as well, all in the serverless function without having to rewrite this code base at all. So it's a very, if you like HTML and you like not authoring your markup in weird esoteric JavaScript, wherever it may be, this is kind of a solution for you. It also brings the idea of server rendering to a static site generator, which is super interesting to me. Blog post comes out tomorrow. Be sure to check algolia.com/blog for that. We'll tweet about it. I'll definitely be super hype about it, so you'll get to hear about it. But also, since it is the Jamstack, be sure to come by the booth tomorrow, the Algolia booth at Jamstack.conf, jamstackconf.com, and I'll do a demo around this potentially. I've got another demo up my sleeve that's a Jamstack demo around YouTube ingestion that I'm going to show off in the morning in the booth as well. So if you're interested in the Jamstack, interested in how Algolia pairs well with it, be sure to come check us out at Jamstack.conf tomorrow as a segue awesome. to the end of our time together.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, one last thing. I'm sure folks have already, it's been a long time. We've been talking for a while,
sure.
But I thought it might be fun. So one thing I've been working on in my spare time is we're trying to build a battle snake that is powered by search, which maybe isn't the best use of search out there, but I thought it was kind of a fun kind of use case. And it's just early days, but I thought maybe it might be kind of fun to see how far our snake can get today. And then we'll see as we kind of continue.
I haven't actually seen this in action yet. I would love to see this in action. Absolutely.
It's not the best snake yet, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So,
for those that don't know, while Chuck gets his screen up, Battle Snake is a programmatic snake game where coders compete against coders to make the best snake for a board. And Chuck has apparently made it powered by Algolia.
Yeah, so this is a sneak peek of some of my horrible code here. But basically what we're doing is we're doing a couple of queries here. One to look for wall patterns to decide whether or not we need to avoid walls. And then one looking for food. So we're going out and based on the current setup of the board, we're trying to see if there's any food around us. And right now it only has a 1 square visual around itself. So we're going to go ahead and add our pal Searchy here to a game.
Good old Searchy.
And we'll go ahead and start it. And let's see how far Searchy gets today. All right, go Searchy, go. Getting that Starbucks or whatever that is.
And how is Searchy knowing what to do?
So right now, Searchy is we're building 2 essentially visions. We're building a vision around of all the walls and then a vision of all of the food. Now remember, Searchy only knows a 1 square area away from, I'm pointing to the screen, a 1 square area away from its head.
Or Searchy.
Right, so now Searchy sees those food and is going for it. And if Searchy doesn't see any walls or any food, Searchy right now just kind of picks a random direction to go. So, but as soon as Searchy gets to food, now see Searchy went for Searchy went for that food, but didn't know its tail was there. So we got to 121. So that's the score to beat. And we're going to continue to build. My goal is to build larger indices with more patterns in it to make Searchy smarter. So we'll see what happens.
So as it turns out, Algolia is a great search engine that can also power a snake's search for food.
Yes.
Nice. Perfect. All right. So a couple things to note. Again, I'm going to mention JamStackConf tomorrow. Be sure to stop by the booth. Be sure to check out my Learn with Jason segment during the conference as well. But also, we're going to be doing this more and more. We're going to be answering questions. I love the questions we got earlier. That was amazing to kind of kick things off.
Shout out to Taylor and shout out to Sutha. Thank you so much for being engaged. And anyone else, you're all welcome to come in and talk to us.
Exactly. And in the future, we hope to be showcasing more content coming in from the community. I actually forgot to mention this. There was a Smashing Magazine article a few days back from Miracle that is about search functionality inside of a Nuxt app. And it's actually a really great, what I can consider a soup to nuts tutorial. It starts with nothing, builds a Nuxt app, builds a blog in the Nuxt app, indexes the content from the Nuxt app, creates the instant search using the View instant search, and then keeps things up to date. So it's a really interesting how to use Algolia, but also how to use Nuxt, which I haven't used Nuxt yet. I've used Next, I've used View. Nuxt is a new one for me still. I haven't had a chance to dive in, but super interesting to kind of see someone in the community making some amazing content. And if you make content, we definitely want to share it on these streams as well.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. I had fun.
So I think with that, we will close the door and we'll say, see you next time. Hopefully next time will be in a week. I think our audacious goal is to be able to do this weekly. Obviously check the Algolia Twitter, our Twitters as well. We'll be talking about it. So check at there it is right there, at BRob and at Chuck M on Twitter. And we'll be announcing things as well as at Algolia to make sure that you're up to date on all the things happening in our little section of the internet.
Awesome. All right, Brian. I'll see you later.
We'll see you all next time.
Bye all.